Hi, this is Carlen Maddux. I'm the author of a new book called A Path Revealed: How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze called Alzheimer's. You're watching Mr. Media.
I'm Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview. You can see, hear, and read more than 1,000 of my previous celebrity interviews at MrMedia.com. That's MRmedia.com. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, iTunes, Apple News, Google Play, or Stitcher, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On today's show, I'll welcome journalist Carlen Maddux. His first book is a personal and all too true story he wrote about his late wife Martha's physical, mental, and emotional disintegration. A Path Revealed: How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze Called Alzheimer's. Stick around. For nearly 2 decades, I've worried about my friend Carlen Maddux. Carlin published some of my best work as a journalist for more than 20 years as the man behind the Maddox Business Report, a long-running Tampa Bay area magazine. Through every editor he hired and fired, and at least two recessions, my byline was a constant on his masthead, and I have an armload of awards to back it up. But in 1997, his wife Martha, a beloved political figure here in St. Petersburg, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. She was just 50 years old, and they had been married for 25 years. Their lives and those of their 3 children, as well as those of his employees, were never the same. So let me put this in a little context. Martha and her family inexplicably lived with Alzheimer's for the next 17 years. It was a hard, unrelenting, soul-sapping existence that no one should have to endure, whether as a victim or a helpless family member or friend. In the pages of his first book, A Path Revealed: How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze Called Alzheimer's, Carlin takes readers with him on a globe-spanning religious journey to make peace with having his beloved partner ripped from his embrace way, way too soon. Carlen Maddux, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. Good to see you. And a very old friend.
Yeah.
Well, you're not. You know what I mean.
Well, long-standing friend.
Long-standing friend. Thank you. Yes, we go back a long ways, and it's good to see you here. But I got to say that even before reading A Path Revealed, I knowing what you've been going through the last 20 years, I just couldn't imagine being in your shoes. And it's not a matter of your shoes being so much bigger than everyone else's, because you're a very tall man. I just, it's
Size
just,
14.
there you go. I'm not kidding, folks. I know you can't tell that the man is that tall, but yeah, size 14 shoes. But now that I've read the book, I mean, I really can't imagine the strength of character and the determination it took to live through Martha's illness again and again as you wrote and rewrote the book. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, the Martha was diagnosed in '97 with Alzheimer's, and then moved into a nursing home in 2008. Almost from the day that she was diagnosed, I started keeping a journal. I didn't do this for, quote, religious reasons or spiritual reasons. It's just, I had so much information coming at me, and I had so many questions inside. I just had to have a central clearinghouse, so it just sort of naturally arose to start keeping a journal of information from the doctor, information that I was reading online. I must have read 150, 200 books, I don't know, over the time. And it was just a long, kind of arduous process in terms of just pulling together this kind of focus, if you will. And as you might imagine, when Martha was diagnosed, our world it didn't turn upside down. It just collapsed on us. And Martha did not want to tell anyone except one person in particular, and did not want to tell her family, did not want to tell her friends, because it wasn't noticeable immediately that there was a problem, other than she was forgetting some names and forgetting a few things, but not too badly. But those were some of the reasons that our family encouraged her to go get a diagnosis, or to go to a neurologist. And so it took me a long time to sort of Well, you don't get into a rhythm with something like this because as soon as you think that you're maybe making a little progress or things are stabilized, then things just sort of can fall out from under you.
I hadn't thought about it, but I remember that you lived with Martha in the house for a long time, probably longer than
Uh,
most people would expect to. Uh,
well, I did a decade. I was fortunate to be able to have some caregivers come in during the day. One caregiver came in 3 days a week, and another came in 2 days a week. And then I was with Martha at night and on the weekends. And ultimately, when our two older children came back from college, they would give me a weekend a month off that I could just go wherever I wanted to, and that was a great gift, a great relief as well.
so Martha lived at home with you for 10 years with the disease.
Right.
Um, I don't know if you can answer this, but what is the average life expectancy for someone with Alzheimer's? It seems like 17 years. That's a long time.
Well, it depends on the person's age, Bob. The majority of people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's are over 65. When you talk about early onset, that means someone has been diagnosed with this under the age of 65. And so the older folks who are diagnosed with this may be passing on from other kinds of illnesses and the like. So I've heard the average is about 5 years.
Yeah. Did anyone prepare you for, when she was diagnosed that because it was early onset, because she was a woman of 50 years old, that it might be a very long time?
I can't prepare for that.
Yeah.
Just nobody. I did remember that our neurologist had talked to us about it. He said, I'm not sure that this is going to be of help to you guys, but he said, I think within about 15 years or so, that there will be a cocktail of medications that someone could take to help stabilize and at least delay the onset of this. But as far as I can tell, research is no closer than it was back in '97.
Who would have guessed that they would have found that kind of cocktail for AIDS, which was such a scourge of the 80s and 90s,
Right.
that brings it under control, and maybe they may be on a path to curing it, but that they haven't been able to unlock Alzheimer's.
No, I forget all the different kinds of diseases, but there's some statistics that come out of the Alzheimer's Association that talk about cancer and AIDS and other kinds of diseases. And Alzheimer's is among the top 6 fatal diseases, but it's the only one that they have not been able to reverse and come up with some kinds of cures for this kind of fatal disease. It's the only one that they haven't been able to yet.
Well,
I mean, the problem is they can't figure out what causes it. And I remember some of the stuff I was reading early on was the researchers thought that aluminum was a factor in causing this. And so I went into our kitchen and threw out all the aluminum pots and pans. And believe it or not, almost every kind of deodorant that you can find has aluminum base to it.
mhm.
I had to go find one that did not. And then about a year later, they said that was a false alarm. And so it's just, it's that kind of a fitful start and frustration and dead ends that you have all the way through this kind of a process.
Is it Tom's of Maine that's the one that doesn't have aluminum in it? It seemed like I heard somebody talk about this once before.
About what?
The deodorant that doesn't have aluminum in it.
I have no
Oh,
idea.
okay. I just seem to remember that from somewhere.
Huh.
So what I want to do is, before we go too much further about talking about you and Martha in a way that does not maybe let people who don't know her know what she was like as a person, I was hoping you could kind of talk to people and tell them, what your wife was like before this happened, what kind of person she was. I mean, I knew her. I had the
Yeah,
pleasure of knowing her, but
yeah.
I think, coming from you, I think that would be most appropriate.
Well, first of all, Martha loved dogs, and before we got married, she made very clear that I had to love her dog if I were going to go further in a relationship with her. So that was real clear.
That was a collie, right?
Not a collie; it was a cockapoo.
Cockapoo, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we had a dog named Calicoco, but that was a different. That was
That's
a later.
that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking of. Okay.
yeah. Well, no, Calicoco was the first dog. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, Martha. But anyway, Martha was just very outgoing, very vivacious. She was very active person. She liked tennis. She liked all kinds of outdoor games and the like. She really enjoyed her friends and doing parties. She loved to dance. She loved to sing. When we moved, Martha grew up in St. Petersburg, and when we moved here in '75, she was pregnant with our first child, David. And not long after he was born, she became very active in political circles. And I guess the first endeavor was in the south end of our county. She was managing the local campaign for the Jimmy Carter presidential race. And so that obviously turned out to be successful, not only here, but around the country. And then she got into some other legislative kinds of campaigns and was the campaign manager or co-manager of those. And ultimately, she served on the city council in the 1980s here in St. Petersburg, was on that council that had one controversy after another. St. Petersburg, if you've been here lately, was nothing like it is now. I mean, it was deserted. There's a big Grand Pink Hotel downtown that was deserted, rat infested. Anyway, that was the era that she was on the council, and this council made the decision that you've written so much about in terms of building this domed stadium for a baseball team that they didn't have in their pocket, and that they were operating under that old adage, build it and they will come. And ultimately they did, but it was a long time before that happened.
She was a woman of immense energy, and
Right.
she didn't. My sense is that you didn't tell her no easily.
I had to figure out ways to sort of steer Martha. Yeah, it was hard to tell Martha no, and Martha's the kind that would ask a lot of questions if you were sort of countering her arguments. So it really kept me on my toes. And but as far as our family is concerned, she was very much the glue in the family. I mean, she's the one who would talk to the kids and hear them out and whatever else while I was away doing the magazine or down at the newspaper before that, working at what's now the Tampa Bay Times. And so she just wasn't interacting. I mean, her energy level. I mean, she was 5'7", I'm 6'5", but she was 2 to 3 times the energy level of me, and it just kept life very interesting.
I was last night as I was getting ready to talk to you today. I was thinking about many times that I'd seen Martha over the years, but the thing that always stuck out in my memory was the annual Maddox Christmas parties.
Yeah.
Because she just seemed to love having people, because you did them at your home, which wasn't far from me. And she just seemed to love having people at the house. She enjoyed. She made everyone feel welcome. I always felt like some years I felt like I spent the whole evening talking to Martha, which I know wasn't the case because you had all these other guests. But I just felt like, she was she asked a lot of questions. She had interesting things to say herself. It was just, and I knew her more through you than as someone who was on the city council and all these other things. But it's just a delightful woman.
Yeah, it's just I remember an incident before we got married. I was teaching and coaching football up in Atlanta, and Martha came into Atlanta after a summer up in Glacier National Park, and so she was going to be teaching at another school there in Atlanta. She was coming in to see if we wanted to proceed any further on a relationship, basically. And so the first night she rolled into town, I went over and helped her move into her apartment, and I asked Martha, I said, well, look, Martha, I've got to go scout a football team here for my school. You want to do that and then go catch a bite to eat after that? And she looked at me and said, no, I'm tired. And so I said, oh, okay. And I went out to my car, started it, hesitated. I stopped. I went back and knocked on her apartment door. And I said, well, look, Martha, if I had asked you to go with me to dinner down at the Hilton downtown that has this big rotating restaurant on the top. Would you have gone with me? She says, of course I would have. And I said, okay, I just need to know the rules from the start here. And so that's kind of, that gives you a sense of who she is.
That would definitely do it. Now, in A Path Revealed, you write a very specific type of story about your experience as dealing with a family member with Alzheimer's. It's not really what to do. It's not a list of call these. It's a spiritual journey. It's a very religious journey. I think I don't even think spiritual is hits it on the nail as much as religious. And I was curious. What happened in your experience that had you go down that particular path to tell the story?
As I was developing the book, there were two parallel rails there. One of them dealing with Alzheimer's itself, and the other this is more like an odyssey, I guess, a journey as far as what was happening to me and sort of things that were going through a transformation on some very deep level kinds of issues. As I was putting my book together early on, I was using a couple of dozen readers, about half the people who knew us and half the people who did not. And every one of them to a T said, Carlin, this book, the focus of this book is this spiritual odyssey, this spiritual journey. The context of it happens to be Alzheimer's. But what you've gone through, the path that you've been on, can apply and help people with a variety of crises and just connect and however they can connect. So their feedback is the one that led me to focus this way. Plus, when Martha was diagnosed, there were not many guidebooks for caregivers or people with Alzheimer's. There were a handful, and there's one or two who were good. I found one particularly helpful. Today, there are just dozens and scores of guidebooks, and I felt like I don't need another guidebook right now.
So, had you been now, I read the book, so I'm sort of asking, in a sense, a little rhetorically here, but had you been a very religious person before Martha took ill?
I would say perfunctory. I mean, we would go to church, and when you're talking about religion, I've had to write this out of my Christian tradition, but I make pretty clear that I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. That I am just trying to share what happened along the way, and I've had to write it in a Christian vocabulary and Christian concepts and the like. So I mean, we were very steady. I mean, I was involved in the church and whatever else, but there was I'll call that sort of a conventional path versus just a deep kind of changing transformational path that I think not only I went on, but even though Martha couldn't talk it, it was clear to me in our way that we had learned to communicate that she was on something similar as well. And that may surprise people because most people think if someone has a mental disability that you just sort of shunt them over here and just that's the end of them.
Well, I mean, it's I guess my sense was that you went from being involved with your religion kind of by rote, that you went to church on Sundays, as many people do, and then come Monday, back to business,
right,
through Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday back to church, and probably involved in activities at the church.
Sure.
If you were called on to do something, you did it. If they needed an extra hand for this, or what, you probably I'm guessing you tithe for the church and that kind of thing.
Well, I gave.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean that's fine, and I'm not trying to get into that. But when did you feel once that she had the diagnosis, and this is a 17-year odyssey, as it turns out. But at what point in that process did you feel drawn closer and closer to religion and to teachings? I mean, and I should point out to people that you looked high and wide for answers and comfort and reassurance.
Right, right. Um, I guess the word that I've been searching for here is my path through this has been more experiential rather than just by rote, if you will. But almost immediately, I mean, the one person that Martha wanted to call, and I was in full agreement, was the guy in town here who was sort of a bigger than life minister who he had married us, baptized a couple of our kids, named Lacey. And so within days, Lacey came to visit us. And I just saw aspects of Lacey that I had not before. I mean, I've seen Lacey in public settings, and he was about my height, but weighed about 50 pounds more than me, and just was sort of overpowering personality and the like. But he just became very kind of gentle, very kind of empathetic, sympathetic to where we were, and he encouraged us. I call it urged us to go visit a friend of his, a Catholic nun. Lacey was a Presbyterian minister, and he encouraged us to go visit a woman by the name of Sister Elaine up in Kentucky, to go just spend some time with her. And he told us, he said, you know, I've known a lot of people, but I just never have seen somebody with her sense or gift of discernment as she has. And I've known her for a long time. And so not long after that, we called her up, and not long after that, we went up to visit her in Kentucky at a place called the Sisters of Loretta. Anybody who is halfway associated may have heard of the Abbey of Gethsemane, who a monk by the name of Thomas Merton made famous back in the day. And so we went up there, and that's where the path in hindsight really began to open up for me, and I began to see I guess I was just taking on, I was like a sponge. I was ready to take on any information, anything that could help us. I wanted to get Martha out of this. I didn't want to just make Martha comfortable. I wanted to get out of this whole issue and deal with Alzheimer's. Even though the medical community had said they had not been able to find anything, I still was hopeful that we could stumble across something.
So and I guess I kind of lost that thread in the book. Was it you were seeking this? I kind of thought you were seeking this out to provide comfort and support, frankly, to yourself as someone who's dealing with someone with Alzheimer's. I guess I didn't entirely get the thread that you were going this route to find help for Martha.
I wanted her to get cured of this thing, and that's where my reporter instincts just started kicking in terms of, let's go down this path, let's try that, let's go here, let's go there. And so I went to a lot of places that were outside my comfort zones in terms of talking to people, and people out of different kinds of ministries. I was spending time reading books out on the margin about people who said that they had Alzheimer's but now they didn't, and I was just trying to get a fix on how that happened and the like. So you can find that there's mainstream kind of books, as you well know, and there are books way out far afield, and I was reading everything I could get my hands on.
So you encountered a lot of quackery?
Yeah, I did. And I was willing to investigate it until I just began to see that that's what it was. And my main, the point that I was being guided by, I just wanted to make sure that Martha would not be hurt as we went through some of these processes.
Now, did you pursue things on the medical side as aggressively? Because that didn't come across in the book.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot on mainstream medicine to persist on. So that's when I was getting out on. I found a couple of books. I can't remember the names of them now. Who said that they had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and now they did not have it. And I wanted to find out what they changed or how they changed, and see if that could be something that we could apply with Martha.
Maybe they were just misdiagnosed to begin with.
Maybe, you never know. Yeah, yeah.
And dealing with you did with a lot of church organizations, religious organizations. Were there some that were genuinely trying to help first, and were there some that more had their hand out or reaching to your pocketbook?
I didn't go. I didn't encounter many that just had their hand out.
Okay.
And after coming back from the Sisters of Loretta in Kentucky, that's when I just began sort of an in-house reading and whatever else. But in 1999, Martha was diagnosed in 97. This was 1999. She wanted to go up to her, it would be her 1960, her 30th class reunion up in Atlanta. She'd gone to college there. And there, I was very shy about going up there and doing that because Martha's abilities had begun to diminish by then. And but anyway, we went on up there, and I got cornered by a lot of people wanting to know what's going on with Martha and the like. Did see a woman who was in school with Martha, and I knew at the same time, didn't date, but just was a friend at the same time in Atlanta, named Mary Zoll, and she was married to an Episcopal minister in Birmingham. We spoke briefly at the reunion party and the like, but then Mary was on the phone to me on Monday asking me what was going on, and I explained to her, and she had said that there at their church they had developed a quote healing ministry, which I was very shy about that. I grew up in Tennessee, where not far from me were some of the snake handling cults, and I'd see some quote healing ministers come through town on what I call the Sawdust Trail, and they were very good at about filling their pockets with your money, and so that was the image I had. But anyway, she told me a little bit about where they had started with their healing ministry, and it had come from an Anglican minister out of Sydney, Australia, and she sent me his book and sent me his tapes, and I became really intrigued. He was dealing with some very basic, fundamental, emotional, spiritual issues that any of us have to deal with, regardless of what our religion is.
And he and his successor were very important to you over the years.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the man's name that I was focusing in on was Jim Glennon, and it was a few years after I started a conversation by fax and phone with him that I decided to go out and visit him in Sydney. I just felt like I needed to see more fully, being the reporter, I guess, that I just had to go see with my eyes what was going on. But what prompted that decision, this would have been 2002, I think, was Martha had a full-bore seizure. Had not had one of those before. I had never seen one of those before. I didn't want to see another one of those again. And after that happened, she went in the hospital. She was there for about a week, got back home. I said, I've got to go visit him. And so that was part of the deal. I mean, that was the prompt to fly out to Sydney. I mean, it's a long flight from L.A. to Sydney.
That's a whole other level of commitment to fly to Sydney from St. Petersburg.
But I mean, one of the things I found myself being attracted, I guess, to some of these types, like Lacey would be what the minister I was talking about in the beginning would be sort of a curmudgeon kind of fellow, very crusty in many ways, but very gentle once you broke through that. Jim Glennon was the same way, and he was just extremely sensitive and very helpful. I spent a week there in Sydney with him. He was both a spiritual guide and a tour guide around Sydney, and just showed me the hot spots around town. And so we developed I think, a very warm friendship through the time. I first met him by phone in '99, and he died in 2005.
I'm thinking that one of the major turning points in this whole story is when you had to make the decision, which I'm sure you agonized over, that it was time for Martha to go into a nursing home.
Oh yeah, that was big major. I mean, someone's asked me just where were the real hard points through this whole thing, and there were three or four. One was when she was diagnosed. Another was when Martha had this seizure. Another time was when I made the decision that it's time to take Martha's car keys away. She had been driving a couple of years after the diagnosis, and it just became clear that she was putting herself in jeopardy and putting other people in jeopardy, and that was tough. But making the decision to move into the nursing home, as good a place as Monroe Manor is, that was very tough. It was then that I said, okay, I guess I'm not going to find any way out of this thing, and just moved even more deeply into a spiritual realm, if you will.
Well, and I recall a little bit of that time, because after you made that decision, maybe it was in the next year or so, you started coming back to work more often. You were more involved, I think, with the magazine, and I have to say, right? And you had to be a little lighter of spirit, knowing that you were not doing this. And no disrespect to Martha whatsoever, but I mean, 10 years of taking care of a family member with Alzheimer's, you made that decision, and it seemed like there was a little more lightness getting back into your soul.
Yeah, there was. I mean, there was somebody, I knew that she was in real good hands, and that if there was a problem, that it would call me. I still visited Martha 5 or 6 days a week for about an hour, maybe 2 hours at a time, depending. But it was just good to be able to walk out the door and tell the folks on the floor, I'll see you tomorrow, and just know that she was being well taken care of. So yeah, that had to be. I'm not sure I recognize it, but if you did and others, I'm sure probably recognize it. And maybe the folks at the magazine didn't want to see me more often. But
oh, I don't know. I think Nancy was probably glad to have you back in there periodically. It's got to be hard. It's the folks who don't know about this. It was the Maddox business report. The man had his name on the magazine, and to turn it over to someone not named Maddox, who, even though you had great faith in the people, it's a little hard. It'd be hard for you to let go, and it's probably hard for Nancy Howe, who took over as publisher, every day, to realize that this is your namesake and it has to be well tended. So
yeah. It's one of those things. It's not like a major newspaper that seems to keep going on forever and ever, but there's a lot of TLC that's got to go into a publication like that.
Yeah, and you're still working with Nancy and still working with Marcia, who's your assistant for all those years.
From time to time, they're helping me out with the books.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. So it all worked out that way. So just to kind of bring things full circle, it's been 3 years since Martha passed?
In 2014, June.
Okay. So
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Yeah. And obviously you've been working on the book the last couple of years. Was it harder, and did it take longer to do the book than you imagined it would when you started?
I didn't know how to write a book. I knew how to write and edit business news at that point. It took me a while to get there, but I knew how to do that. I took an online course in writing memoirs. just understand the structure and what you're trying to do and how to put those together. And that was very beneficial. And that instructor had then put me in touch with a friend of hers out in California who helped me edit the book as I was going through chapter by chapter and just helping me get a sharper focus on on that. I mean, I've gone through quite a few edits on this whole thing, and it just I guess between now and when I took that memoir writing course, that would have been maybe 2012, fall of 2012. So I've been working good 4 years on the whole process.
And since Martha was stricken in '97, your three kids have been to college and out. You've got
Right.
you've had marriages. You've got grandchildren. I think people need to be reminded sometimes that life still goes on. You have this pressing thing happening in your life, but life still continues.
Yeah.
Have obviously you've got the book out now. You've got children and grandchildren. How else are you filling your time? What are you doing these days?
Well, I'm promoting the book. That's pretty time consuming.
Is that
I'm
why
writing,
you're here?
I'm writing a blog online. No, you invited me on. I mean, I didn't make the invitation, and I'm writing a blog every couple of weeks, and just I'm finding that stuff I've read about a book, as far as promoting and marketing it, says you might as well plan on it being a 3-year proposition, a year before you write the book, and then a year or two after. And at some point, I mean, my tactic here is to push it out as far as my strength and energy can push it out. And if it ever catches on beyond that, then it catches on. If it doesn't catch on, but I'm reasonably pleased with how it's developed so far. I mean, talking about the kids and just life going on, our youngest daughter, Catherine, was at home when Martha. She was a junior in high school when Martha was diagnosed, and David and Rachel were both away. David was a senior in college, and Rachel was a freshman or sophomore in college at the time. But Rachel and David now live here in the area. David in Tampa and Rachel in St. Pete. And David has 3 kids and Rachel 2. And then our daughter Catherine is up in the D.C. area there. And so I would tell you that our children are probably a lot closer together today than they would have been otherwise. I mean, they really still have each other's back and are sensitive, and that's a great thing to see.
All right. Well, folks, listen. You can find Carlen Maddux's new book, A Path Revealed: How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze Called Alzheimer's, at great bookstores everywhere. You can order the book at any bookstore anywhere in the world, or you can order it right now at a great price at MrMedia.com, mrmedia.com. If you're watching on MrMedia.com, just below the video, you'll see the cover of the book. You can click on it right now. You can download the ebook effortlessly in seconds, or you can have the paperback shipped to you. I understand via drone, Amazon can get things to you in 30 minutes or less in some areas. I feel like if I keep saying that often enough, it'll eventually be true. And Carlin, you've got a website you want to tell people?
Yeah, that's where I post my blog. It's Carlen Maddux, CarlenMaddux.com, and it's just I had that in place since September of 2015, and I'm learning new stuff about technology all the time, as my friend Mr. Adam with Mr. Media keeps popping me on the wrist and saying, "You got to do this, Carlin. You got to do that." So I'm getting there, but yeah.
And people can go there and also sign up for your newsletter, right?
Right, absolutely, and it's free, so you don't have to part with any money for that. And if some people say that the advice is worth what you pay for, so we'll have to see.
That's true. And are you on Facebook or Twitter? Can people find you online?
I am. I'm on Facebook under my name, Carlen Maddux, and then on Twitter at Carlen Maddux. So yeah.
Great. All right. Well, Carlin, congratulations on the book. It's not the way that people should have to get their first book done, but congratulations on just putting it all together and telling your story, and I'm sure you're going to help a lot of people with it. And thank you for joining us today on Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it very much, and just appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and for your viewers and followers. Thank you.
Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience full of strong men and women who have found themselves powerless to protect their loved ones in the face of inexplicable diseases such as Alzheimer's in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hi, this is Carlen Maddux. I'm the author of A Path Revealed, How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze Called Alzheimer's. How you doing?
That was good. You got the subtitle right, but you missed the last line.
What's the last line?
And you're watching Mr. Media.
Oh, and you're watching Mr. Media. Okay.
All right, so take two.
Hi, this is Rich Scheidner. And if you've ever wondered what it was like to be a stand-up comedian in the 1980s, I'm going to do you a big favor. Instead of billions of dollars for a time machine, you can just spend $24.95 and buy my new book, Kicking Through the Ashes, My Life as a Stand-Up in the 1980s Comedy Boom. It will save you money and give you thrills. It will take you there. Go to my website, richscheidner.com, go to amazon.com, and buy this book.